Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a core Buddhist idea that trips a lot of people up, impermanence. And you know what? We're going to get there by exploring one of the most powerful stories in the entire tradition.
So, let's start not with some dry philosophy, but with a story. And it all begins with this really stark realization. This is the story of a woman named Kisā Gotamī.
All right, so here's where our story kicks off. A mother's impossible quest. We're introduced to Kisā Gotamī, a young mother who's about to experience the kind of grief you wouldn't wish on anyone. Her only son has just died.
So she is just completely consumed by this grief, right? So much so that she can't even accept what's happened. She's holding his small body and just walking from house to house, absolutely convinced that someone, somewhere, must have medicine to bring him back.
Most people she runs into, well, they think she's gone mad. But one person, someone wise, looks past that and sees her pain. And they point her in a new direction. Go find the Buddha.
Okay, so Kisa makes her way to the Buddha. She's desperate, just pleading with him to bring her son back to life. And the Buddha, full of compassion, he sees her suffering. And he says, okay, I'll help you. But there's a condition.
He tells her, bring me a single mustard seed. And you can imagine, Kisa is thinking, that's it? A mustard seed? I can do that. But then comes the catch, the really crucial part. The seed has to come from a house that death has never visited. And for Kisa, this sounds totally doable. She's filled with this new hope.
And off she goes. The first house, they're happy to give her seeds. But then she asks the question, has anyone in this family ever died? And the answer is yes, a parent. She goes to the next house, same story, a spouse this time. The next, a child. And as she goes, this pattern starts to emerge, and you can just feel her whole perspective starting to shift.
So, by the time night falls, she hasn't found a single house. Not one. Her search for a magic seed, it's a total failure. But that failure, that was the entire point of the lesson. She sits down and it hits her. This pain that felt so incredibly personal, so isolating, it was actually the one thing that connected her to every single person she had met. It's universal.
So what was this huge discovery she made? Well, she directly experienced one of the most fundamental truths in all of Buddhism, impermanence.
The word for this is Anicca. And here's the thing, it's not just about big, dramatic events like death. What's really profound about this idea is that it's talking about the change that's happening right now, in every single moment, even in a single thought. Everything is constantly in a state of flux, always becoming something else.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, hold on. If everything's always changing, why does the world seem so solid, so stable, right? A rock seems like a rock. This is a great question, especially if you're used to thinking in a more Western way with ideas of eternal, universal laws.
And this chart here really nails the difference. On one side, you have what's called a substance ontology. That's the default for a lot of Western thought, the idea that reality is made of fixed, solid things. But Buddhism offers a process ontology. It sees reality as this dynamic web of relationships. Nothing just is on its own. Everything dependently arises because of a million other interconnected causes and conditions.
Okay, so this idea of impermanence, it's not just some philosophical island. It's actually more like the first domino in a long chain. Once you really get this one, it knocks over a bunch of other core Buddhist ideas. And here's how that domino effect works, with what are called the 3 marks of existence. First, you have impermanence, Anicca. Because everything is in flux, our attempt to grab onto things and hold them still, well, that leads directly to the second mark, suffering, or dukkha. And then, and this is the really big one, if everything is always changing, that means there can be no fixed, permanent self or soul. And that's the third mark, non-self, or anattā.
So think about it this way. The you listening to this right now isn't a static thing, like a noun. It's a dynamic process, like a verb. You are a constantly shifting bundle of thoughts, feelings, memories, and physical sensations.
There was this incredible philosopher named Nagarjuna who just took this idea and ran with it. He basically argued that if you look closely at anything, you'll never find a solid bottom. There's no fundamental stuff that everything is made of. It's all relationships, all the way down.
So, okay, deep philosophy. Why should we care? Well, for Buddhism, this isn't just an intellectual game. This is a practical tool, a way to end suffering. And Kisā Gotamī's story is the perfect example, right? Her incredible suffering didn't just come from her son's death. It came from her fierce, desperate clinging to the idea that he shouldn't have died. It was her fight against the reality of change that was causing so much of the pain.
So when she goes back to the Buddha, having finally seen the truth for herself, he explains it with this powerful metaphor. He says that grasping at what's gone is like being hit by a second arrow. The first arrow is the painful event itself. You can't avoid that. But the second arrow, that's the one we shoot into ourselves through our own resistance and clinging.
And this is what's so amazing about her story. She goes from this place of just overwhelming private grief to a place of ultimate peace. After she buried her son, Kisā Gotamī became a disciple. By finally accepting reality for what it is, she was able to move through her pain and find true freedom.
So you can see why this whole idea of impermanence, it's not meant to be pessimistic or depressing, not at all. In fact, in Buddhism it's seen as the most realistic and, believe it or not, the most liberating way to see the world.
And that really is the question this ancient story leaves us with, isn't it? If everything is always changing, what is truly worth holding on to?